Morning at the edge of the Great Barrier Reef, and the world's largest living structure is just waking up. For the next 14 hours, this giant potato cod will be our guide, drifting through a vibrant, towering coral metropolis, a sanctuary shared by ancient giants and venomous hunters. But this peace is only an illusion, because when the fading indigo light hits 7 p.m., the drop-off belongs to them. Beneath the surface of the Coral Sea, an ancient and unfathomable world is already in motion.
Deep within the labyrinthine crevices of the jagged coral drop-off, a relic of a more primordial ocean is retreating from the open water. The giant moray eel, a serpent of the reef with cold, calculating eyes, has spent the night navigating the pitch-black maze in search of slumbering prey. Now, as a faint, muted blue hue filters through the heavy oceanic ceiling, it slowly reverses its thick, muscular, mottled body entirely into a perfectly fitted cavern within the benthic ecosystem. In the nearby sandy trenches, the sleek and slender white-tip reef sharks are also concluding their nocturnal reign. Unlike their pelagic cousins who must swim constantly to survive, these highly adapted predators possess the unique ability to actively pump water over their gills while perfectly stationary. Exhausted from hours of relentless hunting, they settle their smooth, torpedo-like bodies onto the soft white sand beneath immense coral overhangs, slipping into a deep, restorative dormancy as the morning light gathers. As the cool, muted blue of dawn gives way to a bright, overcast morning sky, the diffused daylight penetrates the water column, illuminating the vibrant, hard coral gardens in a spectacular array of muted earth tones. Out from the protective shadow of an ancient coral bommy emerges the undisputed monarch of this domain. The massive potato cod, weighing over 100 kilograms, glides forward with a deliberate, majestic grace. It moves with the absolute confidence of an apex predator that knows it has no natural equals here. It hovers motionless over a vivid patch of staghorn coral, surveying its kingdom with intense curiosity. Even the sleek and ever-watchful gray reef shark yields the right of way to this enormous territorial giant. With the morning sun, the intricate machinery of this complex marine ecosystem roars into life. Resting upon the sea floor, the magnificent giant clam responds to the warming currents by slowly parting its heavy shell. It extends an incredibly vibrant, undulating giant clam mantle into the water column, exposing specialized algae living within its tissues to the vital sunlight. This extraordinary symbiotic relationship provides the massive bivalve with essential nutrients, filtering the ocean one microscopic particle at a time. Not far away, a family of neon-colored clownfish, completely immune to the deadly stinging cells, darts vigorously through a magnificent sea anemone. Covered in highly specialized protective mucus, they rub their bodies against the anemone, ensuring their chemical camouflage while defending their tiny fortress. An elongated olive sea snake makes a powerful, perfectly vertical ascent. Bound to the ocean, yet tied to the atmosphere, it breaches the surface tension for just a fraction of a second, taking a single, massive gulp of air before propelling its paddle-like tail back into the maze. The morning vitality brings forth creatures of exquisite adaptation. An intricately patterned hawksbill turtle elegantly descends to locate a dense patch of sea sponge. Using its raptor-like beak, it forcefully tears away chunks of the highly toxic organism. Through millennia of evolution, it has developed a unique biological resistance to exploit a food source completely untouched by almost every other creature. Moving across the living coral at an agonizingly slow pace is a creature of pure destruction. The highly venomous crown-of-thorns starfish drags its spiked body over a pristine branch. It extrudes its own stomach outside of its body to dissolve coral polyps alive, leaving behind a stark, glowing white skeleton of dead calcium carbonate. Above this slow devastation, a wildly different hunting strategy takes shape. A massive school of chevron barracuda perfectly synchronize their movements to form an immense metallic vortex, confusing the sleek predators patrolling their sphere. As midday approaches, the flat daylight penetrates with intense heat. A vibrantly red coral trout remains perfectly frozen, relying on striking coloration to blend in, knowing stealth is far more effective than speed. Out on the drop-offs, a silver dog-tooth tuna cruises parallel to the wall, a biological torpedo capable of accelerating into the endless blue in the blink of an eye. Down in the rubble fields, a tiny, highly venomous blue-ringed octopus crawls delicately. Utilizing advanced chromatophores, it rapidly shifts its color, flashing brilliant, iridescent blue warning rings if a passing fish ventures too close. By 11:30, the intense, flat midday heat dictates a profound shift in behavior. The tropical sun beats down directly upon the ocean surface, creating sluggish, heat-soaked thermoclines that penetrate deep into the water column. The massive potato cod slowly reverses its enormous bulk into the dark, cooling shadows of a deep coral overhang. Coming to a complete, heavy rest on the soft sandy floor, it rhythmically pulses its huge gills at a visibly slower pace, slipping into a deep, peaceful slumber, perfectly insulated from the oppressive solar radiation. Similarly, an ancient green sea turtle wedges its armored shell securely under a large coral slab, holding a massive breath of air. The quietness of the midday reef is absolute and mesmerizing. The giant clam steadily pulls its thick halves closer together to protect its delicate tissues. The neon-colored clownfish completely retreat deep into the shaded center of their host, entering a suspended state of absolute calm. Even the formidable barracuda hover absolutely motionless beneath a natural coral bridge, suspended like metallic statues. Down in the darkest coral caverns, the giant moray eel pants heavily, forcing sluggish water across its gills. Out in the vast blue, a majestic reef manta finds its own way to rest, entering a sustained, effortless glide. slipping into a deep oceanic slumber. The entire ecosystem has collectively held its breath. But down in the coral rubble, life still calculates. An ornate harlequin shrimp slowly waves its petal-like claws in the gentle current. Listen closely to the microscopic acoustic signature of this habitat, the continuous, localized crackle of snapping shrimp. By 2:30 in the afternoon, the very first microscopic drop in oceanic temperature signals the turning of the tide. The fading diffused daylight takes on warm, muted tones, and a fresh, cooling current begins to pour over the towering reef crest. Inside its deep sanctuary, the massive potato cod senses this subtle environmental change. Gliding out from beneath the dark shadow, it powerfully sweeps its massive tail to aggressively reclaim its dominant territory over the sprawling reef flats. The slender white-tip reef sharks, lying dormant on the pure white sand, begin to writhe their flexible bodies, gracefully lifting their streamlined heads to observe the changing currents and fully awakening their highly attuned predatory senses. As the afternoon light softens into a dusty golden hue, foraging behavior becomes incredibly urgent. A giant, vividly green Maori rasa energetically roots through a vast coral rubble field. Displaying incredible brute strength, it powerfully lifts a heavy chunk of dead coral in its thick lips, casually tossing it aside to expose the hidden sand. Rapidly darting its complex eyes downward, it spots a fleeing crab, swiftly plunging its powerful face into the rubble to crush the hard-shelled prey with a violent burst of energy. High above the reef wall, the swirling school of chevron barracuda feels the changing temperature and instantly tightens their formation into an impenetrable metallic sphere. The transition into late afternoon brings out the reef's most calculating hunters. Boldly emerging from its deep daytime crevice, a vibrant lionfish spreads its magnificent, feather-like venomous fins in the open water. Deep within the dark caverns, the massive giant moray eel senses the approaching evening. It slowly uncoils its long, muscular body, fluidly slithering over the jagged coral formations, dropping into a lower, far more aggressive hunting trajectory as the ambient light decreases. As the clock approaches 5 o'clock in the evening, the fading soft, diffused twilight bathes the underwater world in beautiful, dusty, muted, orange and blue hues. The ancient green sea turtle, recognizing the end of the day, steadily swims upward entirely toward the wavy sunlit surface to take a massive breath of fresh evening air before gliding back downward. In the deep blue void, the colossal reef manta gracefully performs a massive backward loop, driving its wide mouth through concentrated plankton streams before completely dissolving into the impenetrable blackness. The final descent into twilight triggers an instinctual defensive lockdown across the coral metropolis. The vibrant giant clam slowly pulls its vividly colored mantle completely inside, powerfully snapping its two massive halves tightly shut for the perilous night ahead. The sea anemone retracts its long, venomous tentacles, and the nervous family of clownfish retreats entirely into the dense center, completely freezing in place as the ambient light drops dramatically into deep indigo. As a researcher, looking at the stark, glowing white skeletons of dead calcium carbonate left scattered on the reef floor, one observes a profound, objective reality. This evolutionary masterpiece is strictly bound by exacting thermal limits and delicate chemical balances. When oceanic thermoclines retain heat longer into the evening, we see the biological stress play out in real time. Nature is neither cruel nor kind. It merely dictates who survives the shifting baseline of our changing climate. But for the apex predators, the fading indigo ocean dusk is the absolute prime hour of existence. massive potato cod heavily swims to secure its defensive positions near a towering staghorn coral formation. Out on the sheer vertical drop-offs, the powerfully built dog-tooth tuna rockets straight upward, fiercely slashing through a massive ball of terrified baitfish, leaving only a cloud of sparkling silver scales sinking in the gloom. The serpent's hour has finally arrived. The massive giant moray eel aggressively slithers completely out of the cavern, violently weaving its heavy muscular head into tight coral clusters to flush out sleeping parrotfish. Unhinging its terrifying jaws, it ruthlessly swallows a reef fish entirely whole. Simultaneously, a pack of slender white-tip reef sharks aggressively swims out from their daytime caves. Rapidly sweeping their sensitive heads, they detect hiding prey, violently twisting their flexible bodies into narrow fissures to rip sleeping fish from their dens. the daytime metropolis is gone. Our giant is safe for the night, but for the creatures forced into the open ocean to survive, a completely different nightmare is waiting.